Okay, let's dive into this. When we think about major cyber threats, the mind often jumps to really complex malware, maybe zero-day exploits.
Right, the really sophisticated stuff.
Exactly.
Oh.
But what if some of the most effective state actors aren't using those flashy tools at all? What if they're getting in using incredibly simple methods that just blend in?
That's where it gets really interesting. And it's exactly what a new joint report from the Dutch intelligence services, the AIVD and MIVD, is talking about.
Okay.
This report, which is what we're digging into today, points to a new, highly probable Russian state-backed cyber group.
And for you listening, our mission here is to unpack who this group is,
Hmm.
um, look at their methods, their targets, and really understand why these sort of simple techniques make them such a potent espionage threat. It's a key part of this whole hybrid threats picture.
Absolutely. So the Dutch services, they've given this group a name, Laundry Bear.
Laundry Bear.
Yeah. And the report says they've been active since at least 2024, so relatively new on the scene, but already making an impact.
And how did they first pop up on the radar? How did the Dutch find them?
Well, it seems the investigation kicked off after an attack on the Dutch police back in September 2024. It looked like an opportunistic thing, stealing work-related contact info.
Hmm, just contacts?
In that specific case, they couldn't confirm other data was lost. But, digging into the technical details of that attack is what led them to uncover Laundry Bear's wider activities.
Okay, so who are they interested in? Who's Laundry Bear targeting?
The pattern strongly suggests espionage. They're really focused on Western governments, especially EU and NATO members.
Right.
We're talking armed forces, defense companies, foreign ministries, EU bodies themselves.
Which, that tracks with the current geopolitical situation.
Yeah.
Ukraine, Western support.
Exactly. But it's not just government and military. The report also mentions high-tech firms, particularly those involved in military production or advanced tech that might be under sanctions.
Right.
And they hit civilian sectors too. Think IT providers, digital services often as a way into other targets, but also NGOs, political groups, media, even universities. It's a pretty wide net, but the goal seems clear: espionage.
Okay, now you said their methods are simple, which feels counterintuitive for a state actor.
Mm.
What does that actually mean? Why is simple effective here?
Yeah, this is probably the most important takeaway, especially for you thinking about defense. Laundry Bear succeeds because the methods are simple. They're harder to spot. They heavily rely on living off the land tactics.
Living off the land. So using tools already on the victim's network, not bringing in their own malware.
Precisely. It's like using the tools already in the toolbox instead of bringing your own suspicious-looking kit. It makes their activity look way more like normal user behavior.
That makes a lot of sense. So how are they getting that initial foothold then?
Often it starts with getting hold of legitimate credentials, access tokens, passwords. The report suggests they might be buying these on criminal marketplaces.
Buying access.
Yeah, possibly from data stolen by things like InfoStealer malware. Criminals steal credentials, maybe using pass-the-cookie attacks.
Okay, hang on. Pass the cookie, info stealer.
Yeah.
Let's quickly touch on that the link between state actors and criminal tools is a really interesting hybrid element.
Right. So InfoStealers are just malware criminals used to grab passwords, browser cookies, that sort of thing. A stolen cookie can sometimes let an attacker bypass login prompts entirely.
Hmm.
Laundry Bear might just be purchasing this access, this initial entry from criminals who deploy the InfoStealers.
Wow, okay. Buying their way in. What other simple techniques are they using?
Password spraying is a big one.
Right.
Instead of hammering one account with passwords, they try a few common or known breached passwords against lots of accounts, slowly, over time.
To avoid triggering alerts.
Exactly. It's low and slow. Once they're in, they seem to go straight for cloud-based Microsoft environments. Things like Exchange Online, Outlook Web Access, EWS standard tools for email and calendars.
And what's the goal once they're inside those cloud systems?
Data gathering. They grab the global address list, the GAL, basically the organization's internal phone book, and then they just start hoovering up emails and files, especially from SharePoint, where so much corporate data lives.
So simple entry, often bought or sprayed, then just quietly accessing data through standard Microsoft Cloud tools.
You got it. And by not trying to burrow deeper into the network, by staying within that compromised Microsoft environment, they keep a lower profile, stay hidden longer.
I see.
The Dutch services see them as an emerging but high-level espionage threat, partly because they seem efficient, maybe using automation, and they're having success with these simple, stealthy
And
methods.
the report is basically a heads up, right? A warning.
Precisely.
And
It's
you,
about awareness, making sure organizations know this type of threat exists and how it works. It really highlights the need for strong defenses against these specific tactics.
like MFA.
Definitely multi-factor authentication makes stolen passwords much less useful. Also, vigilant logging and monitoring, looking for unusual patterns, even if individual actions seem okay. And, basics like least privilege access, conditional access policies, and user training.
Okay. So the bottom line for you is Laundry Bear, a likely Russian state actor, is effectively using simple, hard-to-detect methods, living off the land, maybe bought credentials, passwords praying to steal sensitive data, focusing on Western government and related sectors.
That sums it up pretty well, yeah.
Right. So here's something to think about, especially in the context of hybrid threats. If actors like Laundry Bear are succeeding by looking normal, using everyday tools, maybe even leveraging the criminal ecosystem for access, how much does that challenge our traditional cybersecurity thinking? The focus on stopping malware or obvious attacks. What new approaches do we need to actually spot the intruder who's deliberately trying not to stand out?